Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're joining me today in this live lecture coming to you from Nkolo Mahadum Wisdom University, presented by Obiora Mba. Today's date is Oye Market Day, in the first month of the Igbo lunar calendar called Onwa Mbu. And in the Roman Catholic calendar, today's date is March 7, 2025. At Nkolo Mahadum, we always use the lunar calendar to remind you that we have our own calendar. We have our own calendar before the arrival of the Europeans in our land, and also to let you know that if things are going well, this lunar calendar should be the first. That is what we're supposed to be using. And then the Roman Catholic calendar that will then come second. Also, our lecturers, our professors from Nkolo Mahadum usually dress in Igbo attire, in African, to promote African, Biafran, Igbo attire. That is the way we dress, the way the lecturers dress. So our dress is to promote our culture. And also, we have also been asking you to use your common sense, your conduce. Anytime you are receiving or seeing things, use your conduce to put those things together before you make a decision, because what you are saying can be interpreted from different points of view, depending on how you are saying it. And therefore, we are asking you to please invite your family, your friends to join and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other social media platforms. And we would like you to like our lectures, comment and share them. If you miss any of our lectures, please go back and listen to it, and go back to our previous lectures. We have had so many lectures, all for your benefit. And the title of today's lecture is that the Western Europeans are always supporting wars because they have benefited from them. The Western Europeans, like the Britain, France, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, and the rest, they always support wars because they have been benefiting from wars. And even amongst themselves, between pre-500 BC to 2025 today, they have had about 500 wars all put together, different wars fighting each other since pre-500 BC, that before we started to use the Roman Catholic Church calendar. So they've been fighting themselves from pre-500 BC to 2025. If you count how many wars that is notable, not the ones that are not notable, it's more than 500 wars within Europeans themselves, within the European continent. So there must be benefits for those wars. If not, why are they fighting it? And we have also seen in this our lifetime all the wars that they have fought, that they have been benefiting from. And also, remember, it is also these Western Europeans that went to the places called USA today, or Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And even when they came to Africa, they occupied about 70% of the land of South Africa. and also 70% of the land of Namibia. And so you can tell that these Western Europeans have been benefiting from the wars. That is why they continue to support Ukraine. So when you see that America is pulling back from Ukraine, why they are continue to support Ukraine is that they know that at the end of the day, the abundant natural resources of Ukraine will be shared amongst themselves. Also, according to Wikipedia, from 1839 to 1845, Britain and China fought. They fought a war called First Opium War, because the Chinese were restricting trade with Britain and also over their diplomatic dissatisfaction. Britain does not like the diplomacy between the then Qing dynasty of China and the British government, and they went to war called the first Opium War between 1839 and 1845, and Britain won that war. They won that war, which means they gained from that war. Also, between 1856 and 1860, there's another second Opium War. This time, the United Kingdom and France are together. They form an alliance and fighting against the Qing dynasty of China. And they also defeated China. They defeated China and legalized the opium trade in China. So you can see that they are benefiting from the wars. That's why they always support war. Also remember, the scramble of Africa. The scramble of Africa is also a world war. But they didn't call it a world war, but we at Nkolomo I call it world war. And the scramble for Africa actually began when King Leopold II of Belgium set up the International African Association in 1876 to research inland Africa. And when they did that research, they discovered that there's abundant natural resources in Africa, like gold, copper, rubber, diamonds, palm oil. And during this scramble for Africa, when they start to fight to gain territories, thousands of Africans were killed as a result of each nation trying to claim the land of Africa. And those lands claimed, which they eventually shared between 1884 and 1885 in Germany, in Berlin, Germany, led to colonization, neo-colonization of Africa today. So they continue to gain from wars. Also, the First World War, which is from 1914 to 1918. In that First War, remember, the Ottoman Empire was defeated, and the Europeans also control all the lands of the Arab people. It is interesting, and we want you to know, when you see the map behind us here, the world map, take a look at the world map. You will see that the Europeans are all over the place. They are the ones that have been benefiting from all the wars that they've been going into. And the First World War gave them the land of the Arabs. And thereafter, the Second World War, which was from 1939 to 1945, they also won that war, and they formed United Nations. And in that United Nations, some of them, like Britain, France, and United States have permanent membership and veto power. So they are the one making decisions about what is going on in the world. And again, remember the NATO-Iraqi war, which began from 2003, from 20th March 2003 to December 18th, 2011. That war also gave them all the oil in Iraq. You remember the one in Libya, the NATO-Libyan war from 19th March 2011 to 31st October 2011. That was a short war, and they are now in control of all the oil of Libya. You remember the NATO Afghanistan war from 2001 to 2021. That one lasted for 20 years, and they failed to conquer Afghanistan, because if they had defeated Afghanistan, they would have also plundered all their resources and even introduced their Western culture to the Afghanistan people. And now the current Ukrainian-Russian war, which began in 24th October 2022. And you can see now in that war, the Ukrainian war, the world knows that it's a proxy war between the Western Europeans and Russia. And now that the United States, which is their leader in NATO, is pulling back from that war, you can see how Germany, United Kingdom, and France are still pushing for war, because they are pushing for war because they know that they know the benefits they will be deriving from those wars. And so the Western Europeans are always supporting wars because they have benefited a lot from wars. They have benefited from wars, so don't be surprised when you see them clamoring for war, war, war. That's what we at the Nkola Mahadum want you to know today. That when you see France threatening that they will use nuclear weapon, when you see Britain saying that they will continue to support Ukraine, when you see Germany still proposing to continue the war in Ukraine, that's because they have been benefiting from wars. Without the benefit from wars, these countries have absolutely nothing. Britain, France, Germany, and some of these Western European countries in the current Europe don't have much, but all they have, they've been getting from wars. That's what we want you to know at Nkola Mahadum. And because we say we're going to be keeping things short, so what we are saying today is that don't be surprised that the Western Europeans are still supporting for more wars, especially in Ukraine. Even though the Americans are pulling back, they want more wars. They want more wars because they have been benefiting from wars. And within themselves, from pre-500 BC to 2025, the Europeans themselves, they have fought more than 500 wars within themselves. And from 1839 to 1842, there was British-Chinese war called First Opium War over Chinese restriction of British trade, and also British dissatisfaction about diplomatic engagement with the Chinese. And Britain won that war, which led to the signing of a treaty called Nanjing. The Treaty of Nanjing was signed when Britain defeated the Chinese in that war. That was called the First Opium War. And then the Second Opium War was between 1856 to 1860. This war was with United Kingdom and France in alliance against the Chinese dynasty. And they defeated the Chinese dynasty and legalized the opium trade. They were able to push the opium into the Chinese market and making money out of it. Remember the scramble for Africa, which actually started when King Leopold II of Belgium set up the International African Association in 1876 to research inland Africa, where they discovered abundant natural resources like gold, copper, rubber, diamonds, palm oil, and others. Because before, the Europeans were just at the coast. But after this research, from 1876, after this research, when they discovered this abundant natural resources in Africa, now they went inland into Africa and started to scramble for land, killing our people, claiming territories, and a lot of Africans were killed. And that led to what we have today, that Africa was divided among the Europeans in 1884, from 1884 to 1885. And that also led to colonization and neocolonization. And we want you to know that neocolonization or neocolonialism is using our own people now to colonize us on behalf of the colonial masters. And that's what is going on today. And then remember the First World War from 1914 to 1918. That gave the Europeans all the land of the Arabs. And then the Second World War from 1939 to 1945, which led to the formation of the United Nations, which gave them also veto power, permanent membership, permanent seats. So they are the one making decisions that concerns everybody around the world. Remember the NATO-Iraqi war from 2003 to 2011, where Iraqi oil is now in the hand of the Western Europeans. Also, the NATO-Libyan war to remove Muammar Gaddafi from 19th March 2011 to 31st October 2011. And now the oil of Libya is in their hands. Remember the NATO-Afghanistan war from 2001 to 2021. For 20 years, they tried to conquer Afghanistan, but they failed. If they had succeeded, they would have imposed their Western culture and also be in charge of the abundant natural resources in Afghanistan, but they failed. To the Afghanistan, we defeated the conquerors. And for the NATO, who lost, they felt that Afghanistans are not a good people to deal with. Now, the current Ukrainian-Russian war, which began on 24th February 2022, you know, the world knows it's a proxy war between the West and Russia because they want to weaken Russia and also take over their abundant natural resources. And now that the US is pulling back, the Western Europeans, especially France, Britain, Germany, and a few others, are still pushing for war because they know that they have been benefiting a lot from wars. That is what we want you to know. They have been benefiting a lot from wars. That's why they're always looking for wars, war. While the world is looking for peace. With this, we shall be bringing today's lecture to an end. But before we end it, we have to advise you again to please, all Africans must rise up to remove all the colonial boundaries in Africa, because those are the sources of all the problems we are having, all the wars, all the marginalizations, all the migrations, all the poverty, all the disease, all the killings. And if we cannot go to Europe and say, you You are one country. Why should we continue to allow this that started many, many years, centuries ago? It is time we put a stop to that so that we can be free and develop our land without any interference. And with this, we shall be bringing today's lecture to an end. Thank you very much for joining me today, and have a very, very good day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.